Welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns.
Hello, this is Kim Howerton. You're listening to Keto Life Support, and this is episode 158. Today, Lisa Brounstein is back with us. I know, so soon and so exciting. Lisa and I always have a really good time together, so we sat down to discuss body positivity and the fat acceptance movement. So Lisa and I are both people that have at various times identified with one or the other of these groups, been a part of it, much more Lisa probably than I, but we both have experienced at different times in our life being parts of these movements. So we felt like we had kind of an interesting, maybe interesting, but hopefully somewhat unique perspective to talk about these groups and this topic. But this is really just our personal feelings. Please, we do not speak for these groups. We do not speak for anybody but ourselves. We just were having a discussion, and to be perfectly frank, it was a little uncomfortable at times because it's like, I don't know, it's a little bit here, it's a little bit there. And so, just if you want to listen in to what our thoughts were and what we were feeling at the time, well, join us today to be a fly on the wall for our conversation around these movements.
Hey, it's Kim, and I'm back here with Lisa Brounstein. Hey, Lisa.
Hey.
So today, Lisa and I thought, why don't we talk about fat acceptance and body positivity? Because we were having a conversation about it anyway, and we thought, why don't we hit record? Basically, and that's how I podcast. So Lisa's a really great person on this topic in my mind, because you were definitely what I would say would be part of the movement, whatever that means, at one time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was a member of NAFA. I was very involved going to BBW dances and being a person who spoke highly of everybody needs to be accepted exactly how they are. I think I've told this story a billion times, but I was driving home from work and I wasn't paying attention and I slammed on my brakes and my whole body just shook. And I got angry at myself. I started yelling at my body and I was like, I hate you. I was crying, my body was shaking and all jelly and gross. And I just was like so angry. And I got home and I ripped off my clothes and I got on the scale. And then I picked up my clothes and got back on the scale. And I just kept weighing myself. And I was like in this weird, like, you're so fat, you're so awful. And I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. And I was like, what is happening? This is not the life that I wanted. This body has taken me so far in life and I'm spending so much time hating it. And so I was like, I'm done. I'm done hating my body. This is the body I have. And then at that point, I discovered that there were a whole bunch of people just like me, fat and proud and loving their bodies exactly how they were. So that was kind of my foray into fat acceptance, size acceptance. And we didn't really call it body positivity then, but
I think that came later. I don't know, in like the 90s. When did body positivity start? I don't know.
I think when it became a hashtag.
Right. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm like junior you in some ways. There was a point in my life where I was like, look, this is what it is. I have to stop hating myself this much. And I just have to live in this body and deal and not feel like a constant apology was needed everywhere I went. I don't know how successful I was at that, to be perfectly honest. There was a lot of backsliding. I never fully really got there, but there was a solid attempt for many years of me just trying to accept who I was instead of just actively hating myself. It was more, I became more like a sort of like one of those like slow, smoldering, resentful relationships instead of an actively abusive one, though. I mean, like I said, I don't know that I fully got there, but I tried. But at the time, I definitely embraced a lot of so when I was, because I'm like your younger sister, I'm a few years younger than you. So I remember when I was in high school hearing about fat acceptance and hearing about BBW. And, so I knew of those concepts. But then I remember in kind of more like when I was in college or maybe young adulthood, hearing about body positivity. And there seemed to be, at least initially, a difference. You can tell me if you agree or disagree. But back in the day, I remember that fat acceptance was much more militant and political. It was about rights. It was about treatment of others. It was about, a very it was much more aggressive, and it was about being fat. It wasn't just about anything. It wasn't about differently abled bodies. It wasn't about color. It wasn't about any of the topics we've come to kind of talk about more these days. It was literally just about stop mistreating me because I'm fat.
Right. Size discrimination. It was
right.
Well, and also, as we discussed too, in making sure that there's room for people of size, right? That a fat person shouldn't have to buy 2 seats on an airplane is how they would feel. Or when you go to the doctor, you should be treated for what you're there for, not always be treated for your size. It was very important for us to feel like when we went to the doctor with a cold, we were going to be treated for our cold, and that we didn't look at our bodies as something that needed to have any medical intervention, unless I'd gone for medical intervention for my body. But that never happened.
Right. And then when the body positivity movement started, I felt much more that was more of I have a body and that is good. It was just being positive about your body, whether that was a very large body, a smaller body, a differently shaped body. It certainly encompassed more of the larger people bodies, because that was a lot of what people were critical of themselves. But I felt like the body positivity idea was more of an emotional movement, one where it was more about how you felt about yourself and how you interacted with people, and included any type of thoughts about your body. So those are how I saw the movements being different. Did you have a similar or different experience?
I think similar. Again, the whole body positivity movement really was after me, like after my participation, so to speak, because now I feel like I am body positive and I'm in a smaller body because I treat my body positively, right? But I think also, if you think about body positive, it was like the Dove ads with different shapes, different colors, different abled, like you were saying. But now I think with all of the videos that we see, the little short videos, I don't necessarily know
TikTok.
There you go. I wasn't going to say it, but yes, TikTok. The TikTok, all the different reels, you're seeing body positive that's kind of, how do I say this? Putting frosting on a mud pie, like the mud pie of you're not really taking good care of yourself. Is that body positive? Like if I'm watching you eat corn dogs and ice cream, how is that body positive? It's kind of a confusing message for me now. Right.
And now it's become, just like anything. I don't want to go too political, but I think that just like a lot of really solid concepts that I was very much a believer in my younger days, when I look at the words that were used to describe that way, now I'm like, I don't even recognize that movement anymore. It's gotten very different. And I feel like it's gone from, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know what to say. I feel like in certain ways, things have gone from, please stop making my life harder than it needs to be because of my body, to you must change everything about yourself so that I am not inconvenienced
Right.
in this body. Like there's a middle ground somewhere that I feel like we're missing.
Well, I think, I mean, again, not to get political, but
Yeah.
I think we have an issue, just an overall issue with society in general, that we're just not nice to each other, and we're just not kind to each other, and we're super, super judgmental of each other.
Right.
And there's no space for anybody to just be. So you have people who feel like they're oppressed. Let's just say the fat people, and I was one. They feel oppressed, they feel diminished, they feel discriminated against. So therefore they're coming bigger, like they not bigger. They're
More aggressive.
More aggressive. Look at me, F you. I'm eating corn dogs and cream cheese and bacon and bagels and just blah.
It's interesting because if I like stop and like take a step back and think about it, it's like, well, if they want to eat on camera, okie dokie, like that, sure, go right ahead. Like that's something that everyone can do. But there seems to be like, a desire for some shock value. So, and as a person who, like, there are a few channels, I don't really want to do the TikTok, but, sometimes I see something on YouTube or somewhere where I'm like, what's going on over there? So there are a lot of like YouTube channels of very large people. And I like watch a few of them just because I always like to plug in with like somebody I don't want to forget what that was like in a way. So sometimes I'll catch little glimpses of things and I'll see them eating and I'm not like, sometimes I'm like, I think they want to be like for the audience to say, oh, look at that disgusting person who's fat eating that food. And I'm like, no, I don't feel that way. I just feel really sad because I know what that food is doing to your body. I would feel sad about anybody eating that. And you're killing yourself.
Well, okay. So I'm torn on that because there's part of me that's like, yeah, okay, they're killing themselves. Yeah, whatever. That's on them. They're also like raking in the dough because there are a lot of people out there who want to see that. Whether it's a sexual fetish, whether it's another kind of fetish, whether it's just like watching a car accident. It's why people used to watch NASCAR. You watch for the car crash. And that's what this is in a lot of ways. So
and they include those moments for sure because they make a ton more money on the videos where those things are happening.
Yeah. So
I can't watch it.
Yeah.
Like it makes me too sad.
Yeah. But for them, they're not sad now.
Yeah.
And that was the thing too. When I was in my 30s, it was easy to do that. It was easy to sit down and eat all the stuff. I mean, I do have disordered eating. I still deal with disordered eating. So when I was super fat, I could sit down and eat 10 things from Taco Bell, no problem.
Yeah.
I just didn't monetize it.
You were in the wrong era.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, so, we could go back and forth on this. And I think both of us would probably agree, hey, if that's what they want to do and they want to have a channel where they do mukbangs and like show themselves eating massive quantities of food, like whatever. But I have seen that there's some serious infighting in the fat acceptance movement and the body positivity movement because there are some people who are not in massively overweight bodies. They're in what I would call average bodies, but they have body dysmorphia or they have disordered thoughts about themselves, or they're just what seems to unfortunately be the psyche of the average American woman. And they need body positivity about themselves too. And I see a lot of what I would call fat acceptance people saying, no, body positivity is not about you. It's about bigger bodies. And so thin people don't get to use that body positivity thing. And it's like, come on, like that pisses me off in a way.
Yeah.
Like, no, you are not the only oppressed group. No, that you don't get to claim that. And, it's the way, right? Maybe I'm just getting older, but like that sort of militant land grab makes me a lot less sympathetic to the concepts. Yeah,
certainly. And it's hard. It's like, what are you going to trademark positive? No, it's like everyone
can't trademark body.
Right. And everybody needs to be positive. I feel like positive is such a thing that's missing. So we're going to argue about who gets to be body positive. That's really ridiculous. That is really ridiculous. You know, I think also I feel like an obligation in essence to share my story as much as I do, because I was so big and because I was so public about saying I'm fat, so what? And I feel like if someone came up to me after I was on Oprah, I was literally at a buffet with my fat girlfriend, my friend, and my husband. And this woman came up to me and she said, I just want to thank you so much. I saw you on Oprah. And I said to my husband, see, I can be fat. And it's like, to this day, I'm like, oh my God, should I feel guilty? Like, did she ever get her health in order? Was she sick? Was it my fault?
Right.
So I feel like there's so many people out there right now. They may not want to be a role model, but they are role models. And if they're out there in the public eye, it's kind of like maybe they should have some obligation. Maybe they should feel some kind of, I don't know, something. It worries me.
There are a few people, like I saw this young lady. I was like, I am much older than this lady. I think her name's Megan Ann. And she is somebody who in her teens followed body positivity, fat acceptance, but then she got up to, I guess, maybe 300 pounds and then ended up deciding it wasn't that good for her body and ended up getting a gastric bypass. And then on the back end of her kind of losing this weight, talking about her journey. And one of the things she looks at is the harm that was done to her following these people who told her a lot of things, including that any desire to lose weight is bad. You shouldn't have that as a goal. And I think really the split for me comes with, in your heart of hearts, can you truly say that no matter how much somebody might weigh, they can still be a very healthy person for their life? I mean, there are periods of time you can get away with a lot of things, but your average 50-year-old, can we really say that person A that's 400 pounds versus person B who's 175, that just by knowing their weight, I can't be 99% sure which one is going to have more health problems?
Yeah, certainly. You can't know. You can't know.
I get that, like, person to person, person B might have cancer. I don't know. But on average, on a population level, we can know that the overweight population are going to struggle with not just opinions about their health, which they do, but they're going to struggle with consequences of being that heavy.
Yes. And again, like you were saying too, there's a big difference of weighing 325 pounds when you're 30 and weighing 325 pounds when you're 50. Yeah. I certainly noticed the difference. And that was where my impetus was, where at 325, my feet didn't hurt every day. I wasn't wearing a CPAP, all of those things when I was 30. When I was 50, I was in agony. And I was able to do something about that. And it really was just by losing weight, eating right, and exercising. And I still hate that that's the truth. I still find myself defending my old fat self.
Right. Well, I mean, because we both know how it felt to walk in the room and there was sniggering and we knew that they were talking about us and the way we looked and stares and so I don't think either one of us is saying in any way that it's not heartbreaking and wrong that people are treated that way.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. Treating people poorly because of anything is inappropriate and wrong. I mean, I was that person walking down the aisle on an airplane and people were like, oh my God, please don't let her sit next to me. I was that person. Yeah. I was that person.
Yeah.
So
I used to I remember going to a meeting somewhere and calling them and explaining that I was heavy. And they were like, do you need a special chair? Like, what's going on? And I was just more like, no, I just need you to know, because it was just literally so traumatic to me to go someplace completely new with completely new people that I was just so anxious about the judgments I was going to get that I like felt like I needed to talk to them about it.
Yeah. Yeah. That constantly apologizing for yourself and your size and the space that you take up. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, I feel like I can 100,000% support that all people should have good access to healthcare. And that the first question shouldn't be about your weight when you're like bleeding from the artery. You know, it's like, let's be a little more sane here. And all those things. I don't think, you know, a doctor should fire somebody because they're overweight. And I could list 20,000 things that I feel like that shouldn't happen. But I don't think, in my opinion, and who am I? This is just a show about two people talking about their opinion. I'm not trying to set any public anything. But in my opinion, I'm not willing to say it's an equally appropriate choice. I guess I should say, I do think it's an equally appropriate choice. If it's your choice, you may choose to do with your body whatever you wish. But I think it's wrong to try and say it does not come with risks.
Yes, and I believe that a lot of the people who are saying that they are fat and healthy have some kind of disorder, not just disordered eating, but there's definitely like a mental thing there, a mental, not a, I don't want to say like a disease, but there's something there that's, there's actually a doctor, and I don't want to give her any airtime, but there's a doctor who does say that there's nothing wrong with being obese, and obese is not a scientific health issue. And it's like that person has a mental issue that she believes that she's an actual physician that believes that there's nothing wrong with being obese and a diabetic.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That's a little cuckoo. Yeah. And not to be all judgy, but you know,
people
so that's
choose
her.
Right. I'm sorry to interrupt you there. People choose to engage in all sorts of behaviors, and you're allowed to do them. You're allowed to drink. You're allowed to smoke. You're allowed to be a race car driver. You're allowed to do so many things, and they're bad for you. Now, they might not be bad for one person in 100, that lucky person that doesn't, but for most people, they're a really bad idea. And it's rough when we turn it into a personal attack. I don't want it to feel, because I remember being fat and feeling like that's a personal attack. But I'm not willing to support a really big delusion, is how it feels to me.
It is indeed a big delusion. A lot of it is a big delusion, but I'm torn because it's like, then you get the word positive in it. So you want to say, yes, be positive.
Well, I think it's sort of similar to me, right? Like the health at any size movement. A lot of people say it's the healthy at any size, right? As if that's the title. I have some problems with those people, by the way. I'm not suggesting they're good. Like it's all good there.
Okay. Good.
But just looking at the difference between those two titles, health at any size, I can get behind. I think all people should be working towards their health, no matter what that size they are. I think we can all be doing steps to be in better health, whatever size we are, right? Like they found that if someone is overweight and they work out versus someone who's sedentary and thin, the overweight person who works out is in better health usually. So it's not all about what size your body is, but I don't think you can be optimally healthy at any size, but I think you can work towards health, and you deserve good health care at any size.
Yes, to all of those things. Yes. I mean, again, I know what it was like to go to the doctor with a sinus infection and have the doctor say, what are you doing about your weight? It's like, not a thing today. Today, I'd like something that's not just Sudafed.
Right.
That's what I would like.
Fix the infection. Thank you. But just devil's advocate for a second, which is, I 100% agree that you should be given focused medical care. I'm not going to name it because apparently the internet doesn't like it, but there's currently a virus that has caused a lot of problems in our society the past 3 years.
Yeah, I heard about it.
And what I'm hearing from people in the medical field, I saw a doctor talk about this. I think he's an emergency room doctor, and then he also works in the ICU, I believe. And he was talking about essentially the almost entirely the population of people that don't do well when they catch this virus are people who are very old or very obese. Yeah. And that it becomes a health concern in and of itself beyond any comorbidities, although it often comes with comorbidities. And so, I do think that one of the problems we have, and we were talking about, the polarization, right? People often think your two choices are, I don't care about my weight and it can weigh whatever I want and I can eat whatever I want and I can be in whatever kind of body I want. And then the alternative is you have to look like a fitness model and there's no in between. And so, I would say there is an in between, and it's actually where the average person bounces around. And maybe we need to get a little bit better about taking care of those people.
Yeah. And I think back to fat people getting healthcare, I think because there is such a stigma and because there is such a fear of going to the doctor and having to face that conversation, which is a horrible conversation. Yeah. Even now, 5 years into my journey, I don't always like this conversation. But at 325 pounds, 385 pounds, I really hated this conversation. And I know a lot of fat people who will not go to the doctor because they don't want the conversation. So then therefore they don't have good health care. So
yeah, I think it's a complicated topic. But I know we were talking earlier and you said you had some thoughts that we hadn't talked about before. Did we cover those?
We mostly have. I mean, there are a few people who are out in the public eye right now who clearly have disordered eating, and say they don't. And it's just, I feel like those are people I feel very sad for. I mean, the mukbang people, they're just making money, most of them.
Right.
They found a niche and they get to have their disordered eating and make a buck. So good on them.
Pay for their future therapy. But yeah, I see that too. And I'm going to bring up one of the people that I occasionally see online. There's a woman. Have you heard of Glitter and Lasers?
Yeah, I love her. Anna.
Yeah, she's great. But recently she started having health problems.
Yes.
And she's done a few videos where she talks about, I can see there's just this wall of confusion where she's trying to get right with all these different concepts. Like, how do I be body positive and know that I'm having some health concerns that are weight related? How do I do all these things? How do I integrate all these thoughts and feelings? And, I have to say on some level, I don't know that the modern medical system is helping all that much, right? Because I'll see her, she got a bunch of tests, and I saw one where she was like, I saw this one doctor and he's like, your insulin is way too high and this is bad and that's bad. And I guess he had sort of an aggressive manner. And she got very triggered by it. And she went back to her other doctor who's like, your insulin is fine. It's within range. It's fine. And calmed her down. And I thought, I bet the first guy was actually telling her more of the truth.
Yeah.
But his manner of telling her got her seized up. And she just wanted to be comforted.
Yeah.
And then her other doctor comforted her about it. And then she's like, oh, it's not a problem. And I thought, I would love to know what that number actually was, because I happen to know that the reference range for fasting insulin is way too broad and does not indicate health if you're just within range. So it's just interesting to see her trying to break out of what seems a bit like a denial prison around wanting her comfort more than she wants to be better.
Yeah. And it's that whole thing too, she had to turn off her comments because people were being really crappy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was really going to say the word that starts with an S and ends with a Y, but they were being really, really mean. Right. And it's like she had to turn off her comments. And I think that's not going to help her.
Right. So the question then becomes like, how do you both have love and compassion and wish well for people, but also be aware that it's going to be hard to hear certain truths. And as a medical provider, you probably need to work on delivering it in a way that can be heard rather than reacted to.
Right. And in defense of medical people, their training is, well, right. And their training is that they want people to be healthy.
Right.
Like that's, it's funny. I just read that Hippocrates really did not say do no harm, right? I just read that. Hilarious. That was not him. First, do no harm. But really they do have an oath to not harm people.
Yeah.
Right. Their whole job is to heal people. So when somebody comes into them and all they see first thing is an obese body, for them, they need to heal that. And that's in defense of the medical system. Now, clearly there needs to be some humanity in there as well.
Yeah.
Someone like Anna, I really feel for her. I see her posts sometimes and I just want to reach through and hug her because I was her. But again, she's in her 30s. So
the issues are just starting to creep in.
They're just starting.
Yeah.
20 years from now, 20 years from now.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to say this without sounding like fatalistic, but she's got a long road ahead of her.
Yeah. And I think, what I also found interesting, I remember I watched one of her videos where I guess she'd gone, maybe, was it Hawaii? She'd gone to Hawaii or something with a bunch of people and none of them were as heavy as she was. I guess she'd been working out a bunch before she went for maybe a couple of months and she felt really good about her fitness level going up and being able to do things. And then they did things like go on a hike and it almost killed her. She just was super unable to keep up with them. And she was like, and all of them were fine. And she was trying to walk on the beach and, she was kind of sinking into the sand in a way the other people weren't. And so every step was so much harder because just of the body she was in. And she was so demoralized by this experience. And I feel like that wasn't people. You know what I mean? That was the world. That was the earth responding to her.
Yeah.
And it's a harsh reality that we don't need people to make it harder. Living in that body is hard.
Yeah.
On a daily basis to function. So we don't need people adding insult to injury. You know what I mean? But her alternative for an easier world there would be never go on vacation again, never go on a hike again, never go to the beach, only go places you can go in a wheelchair or a scooter. But that's the fat acceptance solution. Because what is fat acceptance going to do about Hawaii, the beach?
Right. Yeah.
But I had a struggle, and I think you had a similar struggle, that when I finally said, no, I need to lose some of this weight. I'm not okay. I started my weight loss journey because I just had a real rude awakening about my mortality. And I was like, oh, I'm going to die. Not tomorrow, but soonish, ish, being flexible, but not in any manner I wanted to see happen. And once I started to lose weight, I got a little healthier. I kind of continued to progress. I started to have to actually deal with, not feeling completely like a hypocrite, but a little bit my identity as a person who was a bit of, I used to get people coming up to me when I would speak at events and be like, you're such an inspiration. And I remember being simultaneously oh, that's sweet. And also a little insulted. And I was like, because I'm willing to stand in front of other people in a fat body. That is what that inspires you. But I had to realize to them, it was a big thing, but I had to come to some peace with the idea that I had been lying to myself.
Yeah. I still have a lot of denial about it. Because for me, it was also about my mortality.
I didn't go on Oprah. So.
Yeah, I was very public. I was very, very public. But mine was about my mortality, that I don't want to die a miserable death. And I know I've talked about this before too. And if my friend was here, she'd probably be pissed at me for keep bringing her up. But watching her die, and watching her be intubated, and watching her bloat, and everything that happened to her is hideous. It's hideous. So I certainly don't want that for myself, and I certainly don't want that for other people.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't want to make them feel bad or wrong about themselves, especially if they have true disordered eating, and if they have a way of dealing with life that makes them feel good that they now will no longer have. I get that that's really effing hard.
Right.
It's really hard. So
yeah. I mean, I will say that as much of a busybody person I am by nature, I constantly say, like, other people's bodies are none of my business.
Absolutely.
None of my business. Like, I might have a thought, but I'm not going to have a voicing of that thought. I'm human. I see things and I have a thought. But if I act on that thought by action or word in a way that is unkind or unsupportive to another human, that is a me failing. And that is something to work on. And, I get a lot of people coming to me as a coach saying, I have this person in my life, mother, daughter, father, sister, cousin, coworker. And I know they'd be so much healthier if they just did X, Y, or Z. And I'm always like, don't say a word. Don't say a single solitary word.
Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah. Be the beacon, not the foghorn, is what I usually try and say, right? Like, shine so bright that they are attracted to you and one day will ask what you did because they're wanting to be on a journey like you. But if you just blow noise their way, they will do everything to block it out.
Yeah, it's so hard.
It's so hard because if everyone else would just do what I would think that they should do, the world would be perfect.
Right, it'd be so much better.
And except for me, but everyone else. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I feel a general sense of worry and dread these days when I look at social media.
I think that's a lot of this too. Because there wasn't this. Like when I discovered fat acceptance, it was in the back of a magazine. I was looking at a magazine. I remember I was actually in BBW magazine. And at the time that I was in BBW magazine, they told me that I was the largest model they'd ever had. It's like, wow,
by the way,
really?
People probably don't know. Do you think people know what BBW is?
Oh gosh, maybe not. Big, beautiful woman.
Yeah. There were parties and I remember hearing about them. I never went to one. I was a little young, but I remember hearing about them.
Well, it's funny when you were talking about the time when you were in college.
Yeah.
That was when I discovered all this. So it's all around like the mid 90s, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's, I think that, just we all need a bit cooler, saner head around things. You can say that about almost everything. But ultimately, I have to stand my ground here and state my opinion. And people will either come towards me or away from me. And that's the way life is supposed to work. In saying, like, I don't think anyone should be treated poorly. I think everyone deserves to have good thoughts about themselves. I don't think anyone should be discriminated against. I think we should make reasonable accommodations for people where we can. And I don't think one of those accommodations should be denial.
Yeah, agreed. I agree.
Okay. Was there anything else you wanted to say about the topic?
I'm sure I have a whole bunch of stuff I can say, but I think I'm going to stop for now before I say something that I will regret.
We are trying to be on our company behavior today. Yes. It's more about opening the discussion than closing it here. If people have thoughts, if people want to talk about it, I think both of us are open to it. We might even maybe do a live or something if people want to chat. Absolutely. So let us know, people that are listening, if you want to get in on this conversation a little bit more, or you have thoughts or questions. We'd love to hear it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining me today, Lisa.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're part of the Keto fam. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.